Hello and welcome to grammar class. Today's topic is the adjective clause. We know that an adjective is a word that describes a noun or a pronoun in the sentence. So an adjective clause is a group of words with its own subject and predicate, and it does the work of an adjective in the sentence. In other words, if a group of words which has its own subject and predicate describes a noun or a pronoun in the sentence, it's called an adjective clause. An adjective clause, which is also called a relative clause, is in fact a subordinate or dependent clause that describes a noun or a pronoun placed right before it in the main clause. So you see, an adjective clause is a subordinate clause. It does not make a clear sense by itself. It depends on the main clause while describing a noun or pronoun in the other clause. Now see some examples of adjective clauses on your screen. This is the book that father gifted me. Here, that father gifted me is the subordinate adjective clause. Here, this is the book is the main clause. That is the subordinating conjunction. Father is the subject of the adjective clause, and the clause that father gifted me describes the noun book in the main clause. In the same way, the boy who stood first is my brother. Who stood first is the adjective clause describing the noun the boy. In the third sentence, I don't know the reason why he failed. Why he failed is the adjective clause describing the noun the reason in the main clause. In the fourth sentence, the story which he narrated was interesting. Which he narrated is the adjective clause describing the noun the story. And in the last sentence, do you know the place where she lives? Where she lives is the adjective clause referring to the noun the place in the main clause. So we see in these examples that the underlined adjective or relative clauses describe the nouns that come right before them in the sentences respectively. You will notice here that each of these adjective clauses has its own subject and predicate and describes a noun or pronoun in the sentence doing the work of an adjective. But the question is, how do you identify an adjective clause in the sentence? You see, adjective clauses or relative clauses are introduced by relative pronouns such as who, whom, whose, which, and that, or by relative adverbs such as where, when, how, why. In other words, if you see any of these words at the beginning of a clause and after a noun or pronoun that it describes, you know that it's an adjective clause. So an adjective clause always starts with one of these words and comes right after a noun or pronoun in the main clause to describe it. And remember, the noun or the pronoun in the main clause, right after which the adjective clause comes to describe it, is called its antecedent. For example, I have a friend who always helps me. Here, who always helps me is the adjective clause and the noun friend is its antecedent. Up next, we are going to see how the relative pronoun or adverb introducing an adjective clause in the sentence is sometimes understood and not expressed in the sentence. Now see on your screen some examples of how the introductory relative pronouns or adverbs are sometimes omitted from the adjective clauses in the sentence. For example, repay the money you borrowed. Here the relative pronoun that is missing in between the noun money and the subject of the adjective clause you. Here the relative pronoun at the beginning of the adjective clause is understood, though not expressly used. Repay the money that you borrowed has become repay the money you borrowed. Next, where is the pen I gave you? Here the adjective clause is which I gave you, but the relative pronoun which that comes after the noun the pen is omitted but understood. Similarly, in the third sentence, she is the girl he wants to marry. The relative pronoun whom is omitted but understood. And in the last sentence, this is the book I was looking for. The relative pronoun that is omitted. And mind you, in spoken English in particular, this practice of omitting the relative pronoun is quite popular. Sometimes adjective clauses may also start with as and but. But is used in the negative sense of who not or that not. For example, this is the same pen as I wish to buy. Here, as I wish to buy is the adjective clause describing the noun pen. Then he is not such a good player as I thought. Here, as I thought is the adjective clause describing the noun player. And the main clause is he is not such a good player. There is no child but loves comics. Here, but means who does not. But loves comics is the adjective clause describing the noun child in the other clause. So the sentence actually means there is no child who does not love comics. Let's also remember that the starting words of adjective clauses such as relative pronouns or relative adverbs also work as subordinating conjunctions, joining the main clause with the subordinate adjective clause. Now another important lesson for you. Of all the relative pronouns, who, whom and whose refer to human beings. In other words, they describe human beings as their antecedents. While which and that are the relative pronouns that refer to things or animals. The relative adverbs when, where and why introducing the relative clause in the sentence refer to place, time or reason as the antecedent. Up next, how to replace an adjective clause with an adjective or an adjective phrase in the sentence. For example, do you know the man who is in the blue shirt? Here, who is in the blue shirt is the adjective clause describing the noun man. Now look at the second sentence. Do you know the man in the blue shirt? Here the group of words in the blue shirt has no subject or predicate of its own. So it's a phrase, and the phrase in the blue shirt is also describing the noun man in the same way. So it's an adjective phrase. In the second example, everyone likes people who are helpful. Who are helpful is the adjective clause describing the noun people. In the following sentence, everyone likes helpful people. Helpful is an adjective describing the noun people in the same way. In the last example, the adjective clause which she can wear describing the noun jewelry is replaced by the infinitive to wear. So an infinitive can also replace an adjective clause in the sentence. Last but not the least, please remember we use commas before and after an adjective clause if it adds some information about its antecedent instead of describing it. For example, in the first and the second sentence, the relative clauses who is my friend and which gives us strength add some information about their antecedents, John and milk respectively. But in the third example, the adjective clause or the relative clause which you drink is describing its antecedent, milk. In fact, in the first two sentences, only the relative pronoun who or which should be used, but in the last sentence, instead of which, the relative pronoun that may also be used. I hope you liked this video. Please do not forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel for more grammar videos. Thank you so much.